Welcome back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories, along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have an awesome guest with us. Her name is Jill Schultz. She's an international best-selling author, serial entrepreneur, disruptor, and motivational speaker. Jill's mission is to help people release their guilt from shame. Her own experience of experimenting with other children at a young age because of her own sexual trauma has led her to speak out about this taboo topic and help anyone who has a secret or felt shame of any kind to create a life of love, success, and abundance. And so, without further ado, guys, I want to introduce Jill. Jill, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you because I know this is a very taboo topic that is not very well talked about. And I have talked to people who've gone through sexual abuse and a variety of stages of things. One of my guests experienced that at a very young age of 9 years old and had that happen multiple times throughout their teenage and early college years. I also had somebody have that happen to them later in life. And so I'm very happy to hear somebody like you coming on the show and sharing your experiences with things and making other people feel comfortable talking about these situations that are taboo of life.
Yeah. Well, and my story, people aren't talking about my story. So I just, when God asked me to do this, I was like, oh, hell no, you know?
Mhm.
But I finally got to the place where I was able to see the gift in my pain because for me, it started when I was around 3 or 4 years old, was when I was first molested. And honestly, I don't remember who did it. And after, talking with my therapist on a number of occasions, he said, most likely, I don't remember because it was somebody that was very close to me and I have blocked it, which is very common as well. But where my story, as you just read on my bio, where it goes into the tender taboo part and what people aren't talking about is the way that I acted out with other children when I was just a child myself. And, the last time that it happened, I was 12 years old and I got caught in a closet. And the adult who caught me said, little kids go to hell who do that. And so that imprint, that was probably the big, big, big imprint on my life that started, my unworthiness and being unlovable and seeing myself as a 12-year-old child. I saw myself as a monster and a pedophile. And so just living with that shame for as long as I did, I really, really started going to therapy when I was around 33. But at 41 was the first time that I ever gave myself a break when my therapist said to me, who do you know that's 12 years old? And I thought of my niece. And he said, do you think she reasons like an adult? Do you think she acts like an adult? Do you think she thinks like an adult? And that was the first time when I was 41 years old that I was like, oh my God, I was a little girl. And little kids don't know, they don't intentionally set out to hurt people and to act out, and so it was that pivotal moment when I was like, I finally felt a little bit of that weight lift off of my shoulders and think, okay, wow, I was a little girl. And that's when I was able to start to move into the self-love and the self-forgiveness. And that still took another 10 years for me to get to that place. So I'm vulnerably sharing my next level trauma so that other people know that they're not alone if they have my story. Because if somebody had written a book or had been talking about this when I was younger, I wouldn't have lived with my, what I call my shame cloud, because I woke up in the morning and I had this oppressive feeling. I'd go to bed at night and I'd have this oppressive feeling, and it was this just shame following me around. And so I'm just here wanting to help people have a little bit of relief and know, okay, if this is my story, I get to forgive myself, I get to love myself. And from that place, that's where we get to create a magical life because once you can look at the shame and release it, I like to ask the question, what is one thing only you and God know?
That is a powerful, powerful question that's very, very deep.
Right? And so whatever, and I already like I can feel the energy of the impact of that question. And it's almost like just being punched in the gut, right? And I encourage whoever's listening right now, whatever just came up for you, that's what you get to look at. You get to be brave, you get to be courageous. And this work is not easy. This work is hard AF, it's not, but getting on the other side of that, I said a minute ago that I would wake up and have my shame cloud. And that's why I did write a book. My book is called Liberated, Releasing the Dark Cloud of Shame. And you can find that on my website, jilleschultz.com. My shame cloud's gone now. It's gone because I finally got to the place where I forgave myself and I learned to love myself. And I still look for that cloud. When you live with something like that, as long as I lived with it, it's and now it's gone. So I want that for whoever's listening. Somebody needed to hear this today, and I'm sorry whoever you are, because I know that I just punched you in the face, but all I want for you is just to get past of it and to live a beautiful life, and that's what it looks like on the other side. It really is light and fun and breezy and peaceful and calm. So that's
I think
that's
you I think you hit on something very, very much that lives in the grief world, which is a lot of shame, a lot of blame, a lot of guilt. A lot of people feel those things and very deep emotions, like that powerful question you asked. And I know that when we do live with shame and guilt and blame, those things are very heavy negative emotions. They're actually not things that are going to help us move forward, let alone heal from any traumas or loss we've gone through, but they keep us trapped in that one little place in time that one thing happened. And what I find empowering about your story when we first talked, by the way, in our pre-interview, is that when you released yourself from that moment, I think there's a place that we all have to come to compassion of ourselves. And there are times that, especially when we're kids, we don't know any better. Sometimes we don't. And the thing that people oftentimes forget is that when we're kids, who do we learn from? Those that are around us. And if
yeah.
that was a parent that molested you, if that was a parent that told you how to do things a certain way or told you certain behaviors were okay, you don't even know any better at that point. You're literally being guided by the one person that you should trust and feel comfortable with. But
Yeah.
sometimes that puts you in a place where you find out all of a sudden, wow, that actually isn't right and that doesn't feel good. And why
Yeah.
did I do that? But it's you were being guided there by the person you should have trusted or somebody that was around you that said it was okay, and you come to find out it's not. So sometimes that shame is really nothing to do necessarily with yourself, but what actually got presented to you.
Yeah. I want to say two things. It was not one of my parents. So I know for a fact it was not either one of my parents. Um, but oh shoot, what was I just gonna say? It was important. Oh, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. Oh, I know what I was going to say. That question, what is one thing that only you and God know? It doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with sexual trauma either. Everybody has a secret. Everybody has something that they're holding on to. And so, I am sharing this next level trauma to give people permission who maybe their secret isn't as traumatic as mine to be like, man, if she can talk about that and get over it, then I can deal with this.
Well, I think that's what's really powerful because in the world, by the way, especially in today's environment, today's society, we are all about judging other people and we're
Mm.
about putting people in boxes and using labels to identify people. And I think that makes it very, very hard for people, especially in the trauma field with sex, to come out and say, I experienced this or this happened or I feel guilty for what my behavior. It makes it so hard for us to break those barriers down to get to that place of saying, "What's that thing I'm keeping in between God and myself?" And
Yeah.
that's where I think that shame is actually being weaponized against people and not helping people. And that's where I've come to find on this podcast, the more people I talk to going through grief and trauma, that When we get rid of these labels and identifiers and boxes, and when we allow people to just be and just accept everybody for who they are, regardless of faults and all those things, we give people permission to actually work through those things, and we can actually find peace and find a way forward through that trauma.
I'm glad you brought that up because this is so important and I cannot stress it enough. We make up all these stories about how people are going to judge us if we finally reveal what our shame is, right? And I remember the first time that I was going in to see the first therapist that I saw. I've had three therapists. And I want to talk a little bit about therapy too after when we hit on this. But um I was so scared going in. Like, this was the most terrifying thing that I've ever done in my life. And I had all these ideas of what he was going to say to me, how he was going to see me as a pedophile and a monster, because that's how I still thought of myself. This is when I was 33 years old going into therapy for the first time. And it can still bring me to tears every single time talking about this. Once I said those words out loud, the level of understanding and compassion and kindness to this day blows me away, because I had made up such a story around how that man was going to judge me. And it was completely nothing like I had expected. And as I've been doing my healing work, and the more that I've shared my story with people, and before I wrote my book, I sat down all the important people in my life down and told them my story, because I didn't want them getting it in a book form and being like, whoa. And not one person disappointed me. Over and over and over again, it was like, Jill, oh my God, I can't believe that you went through that. I'm so sorry. I can't believe that you've lived with this shame over this and it wasn't your fault. So I need people to understand that whatever you've made up about how people are going to react to what you're saying is a lie. You get to get it out. You get to get it out of your body. Shame can't live in the light. So the more that you talk about it, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you and I having this conversation, I would be sobbing the whole time. I've said it so many times. It has no power over me anymore.
Can I ask you a powerful question and answer how you're comfortable, by the way?
Yeah.
But this all happened when you were 12 and you first went to therapy at 33. What was it like carrying the weight of that shame around for that long? I mean, that's a long time. That's a lot of years to
Yeah.
carry that.
Well,
And
and
how
and
did you?
even longer than that, because I went to therapy for a couple, probably 4 years when I was 33, and then I was fixed. And then when I when I was 41, I went back because I was still suffering from bulimia because of my sexual trauma. I was bulimic until I was 41 years old. But so even up until when I turned 51, that's when I first loved myself and forgave myself. So we're really talking about from 12 years old to 51 years old, with me living with that shame. Even though I'd started talking about it, even though I was doing the work around it, people weren't having these conversations before. Now the Me Too movement, it's allowing people to come out and share their stories that they've been traumatized. So there's more conversation around this, but there was none of that happening until, just recently. I don't know any other way to describe it than just this awful oppressive. That's why I call it my shame cloud, this just dark weight of ugly, negative, self-hatred feelings that I lived with for that long. It was debilitating.
And what my next question is, what gave you the courage at that point at 41? Because I'm just gonna say it takes some very big, inside yourself to say, I'm gonna face this thing head on. It's been weighing over me for decades. It's time for me to take care of this. Where did you find the courage for that? And what was that moment like for you?
Yeah, well, that actually happened more closer when I was 33, the first time that I went in and talked about it. And I have an event business, and I was working with some really amazing girls. And one of them said to me, they're like, "You're not interacting with men the way that other girls do." Like, I wasn't promiscuous. I would just shut down. Like, I would walk into a restaurant or a bar, and a man would look at me and I would immediately look down. And later I figured out it was because I didn't want a man to see me, because I thought if he could really see me, how could he love me? How could he love me knowing the things that I had done? And now I'm like, how can he not love me? I'm amazing, you know? So I am single and mingling right now. So if you know anyone, I'm taking applications. But that kind of was the very beginning of it was, okay, somebody else is noticing things about me. It's time for me to take the bull by the horns, look it in the eyes and say, you don't own me anymore. And so that was kind of the beginning of me starting therapy and being brave and courageous enough to go in and do that. And that it really is, you have to be brave. You have to be courageous because as I mentioned earlier, none of this work is easy, but is it worth it? Would I want to still be in that pain that I was in for all those years? I don't know, you do the math. I suck at math. 12 years old to 51. It's so worth doing the work. And whoever's listening to this right now, you're worth doing the work to heal. You get to have everything that's on your heart. I do a lot of work around manifesting, and I really believe that everything on our hearts was given to us by God. And we get to have those things, but until you get to the place where you feel like you deserve to have those things, you're never going to feel worthy of calling them in. So, um, yeah, that's that's that.
I think it's so inspiring to hear you go through the. I mean, you're 51 now, and that's a lot of years.
I'm
That's
57 now.
57. So I mean, that's over what 30, close to 30 something years
Yeah,
after this happened, and to see you have the courage to go out there and actually find help and have somebody there that actually supports you and wants to give you space to work through those things, I think is very powerful because like I said, shame is a very powerful tool. A lot of people don't know that, but shame has a very big power in your life. And when you
absolutely.
for example, I dealt with a narcissistic in-law for many years, and I can share that they weaponize shame in a very specific way. And when they weaponize that thing, it becomes a very powerful tool. That's a manipulating tool, and it's
Yeah,
something that will actually tear you far apart from who you actually are. It actually erases parts of you, and it takes a lot of work and effort to reclaim yourself. And that's what I love about your story and your perspective, by the way is you reclaimed yourself, Jill. You reclaimed all those parts of yourself.
oh
I
yeah.
wanted to jump into self forgiveness because that's something I'm very big about in my own coaching journey. And that's another episode conversation. But I wanted to ask you about that. What was that self forgiveness journey like for you?
Oh gosh. I've done some other transformational work. In fact, landmark education, are you familiar with landmark education?
No, tell me about that.
It's a transformational program that really, the best way that I can describe it is when you're pointing your finger at somebody, blaming them, you have three pointing back at yourself. So it's really about taking responsibility for your life and owning even the bad things. It's like, okay, that happened, but I get to decide today what my life looks like. I can't keep blaming everybody in my past for where I am in my life right now. So it started with landmark education, and I did landmark in conjunction with my first therapist at 33 years old. And then, I was healed. And then at 41, I went back because of my bulimia, and I saw him for 3 or 4 years, and then I was healed. And then I came upon a group of entrepreneurs. Actually, I was in a coaching program, and the woman who has this coaching program has another program called Hardcore Leadership. And there's different forms of the leadership program. And all of this kind of stems from a program years and years ago called EST. That's what Landmark Education started with. But I got involved in this leadership program, and it changed my life. The first day that I walked in, I cried all day long. This was during COVID too, so normally this would have been an in-person event. I was on Zoom, and I cried all day because I was like, this is it. This is finally my place where I finally get to the core of this, and I get to forgive myself, and I get to love myself because there was still, up until 2 years ago, there were still certain things about how I had acted out that I felt a deep shame from. And so, and I'm gonna finish this, and then I want to veer off a little bit into therapy and that kind of stuff because I think it's important for people to hear this. Um, But doing that transformational work and having a supportive group of people around me to coach me through that was really how the self-forgiveness happened for me. I remember writing a letter to myself around that. And this woman, Lorna Sherlin, who was one of my coaches at the time, was pivotal in helping me break free and break through and finally getting to that place of self-love. But it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I do a lot of mirror work too. I love mirror work now. I hated mirror work before, but now I'm like, what's up, babe? Looking good today. Hey, I see you. I know that was a little challenging today, but I got you. I love mirror work now. And that's a really good way to start working on self-love, is doing that type of work.
Well, I tell people doing this kind of work is rewriting patterns that are in your mind. And that's where a lot of us don't know, by the way, but 95% of our life is subconscious. It runs on autopilot. And when we have traumatic experiences of life like grief and loss and trauma, those get deeply embedded in us. And it's not so much what we may have said, but it also ties to a feel and an emotion. And that thing becomes a concrete anchored belief.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times when we're trying to heal from this experience we had, it's trying to rewrite not just what's going on in our mind, but how our body processes and responds to those feelings and emotions and memory. Um,
Yeah.
and Jill, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to, because you're just touching on it right now. So I think therapy is important, and I think that please find somebody to talk to. And on my website at jilleschultz.com, there are a lot of resources there. It's under my Get Help section, so there's a lot of anonymous resources there that you can call and talk to somebody. Please talk to somebody. If finding a therapist is important, please find a therapist. But I really, really strongly believe that if you've been seeing a therapist for 15 years, find somebody else. They're not helping you. And this is a bold statement to be having right now, but there's so many other modalities now. There's so many, like I have a really, really lovely friend who is a therapist, and the way that she does therapy, it's different. She doesn't keep bringing you back to the trauma. It's pulling you forward. It's helping you create new neural pathways. It's helping you, get whatever, however it's been trapped in your body, and I'm woo. I wouldn't have used to say that I was woo, but I'm woo AF. And I've done all the things. I've done Reiki. In fact, last night I just did a tapping session with this beautiful, beautiful woman around self-worth. So it's always something that we're continuing to work on. But please do yourself a service and find somebody that is going to pull you forward and not keeping you reliving the trauma, because it's not helping you, and you're not going to get to that place where you can love yourself and forgive yourself if you're constantly having to go back to the trauma and relive it. You need to be building new neural pathways around, okay, let's move forward. Okay, and I don't know what your experience has been with that, but there's so many different modalities out there today that people can
Oh, big time.
get tapped
Yeah.
into, that it helps the healing way, way, way more quickly than what we've done in the past.
Well, that's where I've shared with a lot of people openly. I've been in therapy since I was a kid. I've
Yeah,
I've been to therapy, but I can share just like you brought up today. If you're with a therapist for multiple years, and I mean like 5+ years, odds are something's not working. And the reason I say that very boldly, by the way, is that
I
there
know
are a
these are
lot of
bold
therapists
statements.
out there that make you relive trauma all the time. And they
Yeah,
just sit there and listen, but they don't ever actually help you, guide you through that process. And that's
yeah,
where I decided to become a coach. I thought about being a therapist, but it's such a regulated industry and boxed in. And I
yeah,
also sat there and said, well, I don't want to be constricted when I help people. I don't want that because everybody's got a different modality, a different way they learn, a different way they process things. There's people that go through different experiences. We all do. And so I wanted freedom and flexibility to adapt to somebody's learning style. So I'm a coach for that reason because I don't
yeah,
have to stick to a box. I can meet people where they're at and get them where they
right.
need to go. The big thing I share with people about therapy and coaching is that therapy is very reflective. It's looking back at the past a lot. It's saying, what can we learn from this? How can we rewire some patterns? Therapy can go so far with that. Coaching is very much how do we move forward with this? What do we
Yeah,
do in the forward motion? And
yeah,
so I like to say that therapy is great for some people and it works really well. Other people, coaching works really well. And it's really up to you to decide, by the way, because you know
right.
yourself better. What's going to work for me? What's the thing I'm looking for out of this?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I think that there's some amazing therapists out there. In fact, the woman that I've most recently seen, I haven't seen her in a couple of years, and I really feel like she's more of a life coach for me. She is a certified therapist, but there are people out there that aren't going to keep you stuck in your trauma. So find somebody that's not going to keep you stuck in your trauma, even if you are going to see a therapist. So we are making very bold statements here, like very bold statements about that.
Well, that's what this area is on my podcast. I tell everybody this is a safe place. There is no such thing as judgment. There's no such thing as tell you what to do. There's not. But there is open solutions. There's bold solutions you guys will hear on my podcast. I share unconventional trains of thought. The thing that I'll share with you guys too, because I've talked to a lot of people, is conventional methods of how we used to do things, even therapy included. It's not working anymore. It's just not. And
Yeah.
there's for example, I'm into the woo side of things too. I've looked at tarot cards, I've done psych readings with people, I've done mediumship things. I've looked at all these modalities, and the thing that I'll share that I think is very helpful for listeners, and I want you guys to embrace this, go into these things with an open mind. Don't go into it with expectations. Go into it with an open mind and just say, I always have this phrase in the woo land I share with people: take what resonates, leave what doesn't.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
reason I say that, by the way, is because if you live in that space, you'll start finding out these other modalities, these new modern things. You'll start actually getting things that resonate with you, and you'll start actually feeling a shift in yourself that you might not feel through traditional therapy. And
Yeah.
that's why I like to say give yourself an opportunity, like Jill's talked about today on the podcast. Give yourself an opportunity to release the shame cloud. Give yourself an opportunity to try a new modality, something that's different, because you're an individual. You have had your experience. Nobody else has. And so it's
Yeah.
not fair to force you in a box of conformity to say this is the one way you can heal. There is no one way. If you want to do tapping, if you want to do EFT, if you want to do rapid eye therapy
I've done
with
that.
people,
Yep.
if you want to use tarot cards like I do daily to get messages, if you want to talk to a medium for whatever reason, those other modalities, I promise you, if you go open minded with just what can I take from this, you'll have a very different outcome than you think.
Well, and using them in conjunction with another. I don't really do tarot cards or what'd you say? Medium.
Oh, just mediumship.
Honestly, this is gonna be really weird. I think a lot of people, I think the term medium has been really I think I was raised Catholic, so everything's bad, right? Like everything is of the
Yeah.
devil. So when I started getting into doing this healing work, like I know God talks through me all the time. Like I'll be on a podcast with somebody, and all of a sudden I'm like, and I'll say something, I'm like, that was God. That I had nothing to do with that. So, the whole term of medium and things like that being bad, I don't even relate to it like that anymore. But that's my Catholic shame. But um, definitely use them in conjunction with one another because one might take you to a certain place and one might get you even farther. Like I have a lot of friends who do ayahuasca and mushroom, all that sort of plant medicine to get you even deeper in. And I used to do mushrooms recreationally. I've never done it for the healing modality part of it. But there's a lot of ways that you can get into your pain and release it outside of just traditional therapy. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about, what would you coach people on as far as releasing shame? What's a good first step people can take if they're dealing with a high amount of shame in their life?
Well, number one, acknowledge it. Whether it's you talking to somebody else or you just finally saying, okay, I did this. And maybe you journal. I never used to journal. Now I journal like a mad woman. And find somebody to talk to. Find somebody that you can trust to just get it out of your body because once you can say it out loud, it'll get easier and easier and easier. And I promise you, and now I say this in a very glib way. People think that their shame, they're the only ones that have it. You're not special. I promise you. You are not the only person that has done what you've done. There are billions of people on the planet. You are not the only person who has done what you've done. And, if you find a therapist, therapists are not going to be surprised by what you're saying. outside of killing somebody, let's be honest, we're not you know, but you've got to find a way to get it out of your body. And that's when the healing can start, is when you can acknowledge it and let it out.
I think that's very important because the other part of grief that I share with people on my podcast is that we oftentimes going through public life, we always put a mask on. We don't ever really show our true self to people. And we do this because of exactly what you said, by the way, about shame, is that we've got this fear that we're going to be perceived a certain way. So we change how we talk, we change how we look, we change how we respond to things. We might hold back on something.
Yeah.
We might present ourselves differently physically in front of people. Um, we're always putting a mask on all the time, and that's why I enjoy my podcast because I have people come on and just be themselves. It's like my one rule I tell my guests, for listeners that you guys don't get to hear this because it's pre-interview, but I tell people be authentically you, whatever way
Yeah.
it needs to be. I don't have rules beyond that because when we do take all those masks off, when we peel back the onion layers and really find out who you are, by the way, I don't care how much shame you have or guilt or blame, any of that stuff. I really don't care because I know underneath all that, there's a good person there. There's a
Yeah.
person, by the way, that's been suppressed by events or suppressed by people around them, and they've never actually gotten the chance or opportunity to just be themselves.
Yeah. Because we're always worried if we're going to be judged.
And the funny part about that is that we're all judging each other. All of us are. So at the
Yeah.
end of the so at
Or
the end of the
people don't
day,
care at all about you. They're paying more attention to themselves than they are to you, you know?
yeah, I mean, I had a culture shock when I moved from Washington to the East Coast of Boston. I had a big culture shock. Out here, for some reason, people where I live in Washington, I call it the mean mug thing. Everybody's
You
always
call,
looking at you. I call
oh,
it the mean mug.
okay.
And people are always sizing you up. They're always looking you up and down, like where you're walking, what you're doing. They're
In
always like in your
Washington State?
yeah. And
Really? I grew up in the
it's a
Pacific Northwest. I don't know if
it's
I felt that.
It's a thing I picked up on. I've lived here most of my life.
Okay.
So I moved to the East Coast and I go out in public and people are just like boom, 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 just walking right past. They don't even care. I'm not
Yeah.
even joking. You could like I'd be in a grocery store and somebody would break a glass of pickles or something, and everyone just walked by like nothing happened. And I was sitting there and I learned on the East Coast a lot. I said, people don't care about you as much as you think you do. And I said, "This is very interesting." And I learned, back there when I lived there for 7 years that everybody's life is so fast paced back there. You don't have time to worry about other
Right.
people. You don't
Yeah.
care. And so it was very refreshing for me a lot because I didn't have to wear a mask like I used to most of my life. I was able to just take the mask off and say,
Yeah.
"This is who I am." And
Yeah.
and when you're able to take that mask off, by the way, number 1, you get to meet your real self, and congratulations to you, by the way, when you do that. That's a very powerful moment, a lot of people run from. The other half of that is, by the way, especially when you're going through grief and loss and trauma, is when you do meet that real person of you, you're gonna start shedding those things that no longer serve you. All the mindsets, the beliefs, the behaviors, the way you think of things, those all fall away. And you actually step into this person you're becoming, which is a beautiful thing. You
Yeah.
discover who you are. It's the biggest gift you'll ever get.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard though too, because you start having to shed relationships, shed people, and that's one thing that I've recently had to do, and it's been really challenging. So when you're elevating and you're becoming this person who you're always meant to be, sometimes there are people that aren't serving you that you're going to have to let go of.
And that's why I always say people come for a season and they leave for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's nothing bad, by the way. I don't say people are bad. I just say they're only meant to be on your path for a short time. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think we all serve a purpose in our life, by the way. And that's what I think is beautiful about your story that you shared today. You made a mistake at 12 years old. You're a 12-year-old. You didn't know any better. You were taught what you were taught at that age. And to punish yourself for so long over that, for something that you didn't know any better about, that cost a lot of years of life. And I'm really happy though that you've taken that experience now and you actually help and support people with this taboo topic to shed light on it, to make it seen, to make it heard, and make other people feel comfortable enough to share their experiences.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's so funny when I first leaned into this, when I was like, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. I thought that I don't know if I've ever said this out loud. I thought it was going to be like an explosion of, oh my God, we have to have Jill talk, and we need to have Jill here, and Jill needs to be the speaker here, and blah 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 blah. And none of it turned out like that. None of it turned out like that. Like I wrote the book and I had book sales, and I've done like probably 65 podcasts now. I love doing these podcasts. I love doing the podcasts. But it's really interesting to me that God has had me share something so vulnerable and so different than what other people are talking about. And it's not really going anywhere right now. And I'm wondering, like, what does this all get to be 5 years from now? What does it get to be 10 years from now? Am I only supposed is this the last podcast that I ever do with you? Like, it's reaching the people that it's supposed to reach. Like, it's really interesting to me now that I've stepped back from, because when I leaned in, man, I was like, oh, I have to talk to all the people. Like, I have to share my story. I have to set the people free, you know? And the fact that it has turned out the way that it's turned out, I just wonder what tricks God's got up his sleeve. You know? I don't know.
Well, well, the funny part about that is that A, he'll never show you, B, he'll never tell you, but he'll just have you wake up one day and you go, "Oh, okay, well, we were
There it
going
is.
north south. I guess we're going east west
There it
today."
is. Yep.
So,
Yeah.
um, I wonder about that too. I'm very early on in my my podcast journey. I'm early on in my anthology book I'm writing, and I have those same questions all the time. I go, right now I'm helping people go through grief. I'm helping shed light on something that people run from, that people tuck under the carpet, that people don't want to talk about and say, move on, let go, get over it, and write all these things off. I'm exposing that whole world and giving people a safe place to do it. But what's that going to look like in 5 years? What's that going to look like in 10 years?
Yeah.
What's that journey going to be? And ultimately, we just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know why I felt to say that out loud. I've never said that out loud.
I appreciate the thought.
Yeah.
So so let me ask you this question though. Based on your journey that you've been on, what do you think might be the next step for you? What's been churning for you with this that you've said, maybe this is the direction I might want to take this.
No, it's such a interesting question right now because my life is in complete disarray. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I have a few businesses, and my one business that was my main source of income just completely shifted. It was a direct sales company that I was in. I was worked for a French wine family, and they just restructured their compensation plan and took away over 600 people from my downline. So when that started happening, I'm like, okay, God, what are you doing here? You're opening up space for something amazing to come in. This was, mind you, in March, mid-March, that I found this out. And I have an event company, and I've had that company for 25 years. And now I'm like, okay, God, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And then I have a vacation rental company. I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? So right now, the fact that you asked that question is interesting because I'm in a very transitional space right now.
Well, can I ask you a question too? I know we've talked a little bit about faith and spirituality of things, and you mentioned being brought up Catholic, and my friends used to make fun of me and called me a C&E Christian because I went on Christmas and Easter. So I totally
Okay, yeah,
that's where that came from. And
yeah.
anyway, I wanted to ask you, how did your role of faith and spirituality take shape since your upbringing?
Yeah, it's changed drastically. I went to church when I was little because I had to. And then, when I was out on my own, I stopped going to church because I didn't have to. And over the years of, my transformation and me healing and doing all the things, the work that I've done, I would say that it's really just comes down to my relationship with God, my one-on-one relationship with God. I do a beautiful morning practice where I meditate and journal, and that's where a lot of my inspirations come from. I am very connected to God. God talks to me all the time. And so it's really just sifting out, okay, what lights me up? Because as I said earlier, I believe that everything on our heart is ours to have, and God gave it to us. So we get to have the things that we really want. Like, I don't want a fishing boat. I want a fishing boat. Do I want a yacht? I might want a yacht. So it's just really, and I think God really wants us to be happy, like truly, truly wants us to be happy. And God really wants us to lean on Him. This is God talking to me right now. I told you about channeling. This is God talking to me right now. God really wants us to be happy, and we need to lean on God and trust that God is going to take care of us. And from the very beginning of me stepping into writing this book and being as scared as I was to talk about something as taboo as this, I kept hearing that voice. I got you. I promise. I got you. And so right now, with me being in this transitional space of like, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing right now? I still have I got you. And I'm like, can we speed things up a little bit? Like it's uncomfortable. I'm in a very uncomfortable place right now, but can you imagine being in a really uncomfortable place and being in a very shameful place at the same time? I don't have,
That, that
I
yeah,
have,
that's a very hard place to be.
yeah, I have this clean slate that I'm like, okay, we get to write this story together. I'd like you to write it a little bit faster, but so I don't know. I'm having thoughts about my house and renting it as an event space or for like I had this divine download the other day of doing an entrepreneur incubator. Have you heard of the co-living where they're doing like five entrepreneurs will get together and live in a house for a while? Can you imagine feeding off that kind of energy, being with a bunch of other entrepreneurs that you can be like, hey, I'm having this problem with this right now. And everybody's like, okay, la, 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 here the idea, wouldn't that energy be amazing? And it's a thing that has popped up recently. So I don't know. Sorry, that was a long tangent for a question that should have been answered very quickly. I'm really in a space of trust and faith right now.
Well, I think that's a big part of the grief journey I share with people is that it is a journey of faith and it's a journey of test. And I have found on my own journey that I've been on that the more you try to push and force things to happen, the more chaos and drama that comes from it. And so, what I say about that too, by the way, is when that gets really loud in your life, I always like to equate it to God's closing that door. It's not open anymore; it's closed. And
Yeah.
so, you're getting redirected to an open door.
Oh,
And
100%.
by the way, even then it's not easy because God likes to say, "Well, the door's open, but you got to figure out how to get through it." He leaves
Mm,
that part out all the time.
yeah.
Um, but it's a way to let you know, by the way, when you're going through grief and loss, that it's a way for you to find your path. It's a way for you to find where you're supposed to be. And I really do believe that when we go through grief, loss, or trauma in whatever capacity it may be, it's your journey. But I'll say that it's going to guide you into a place of alignment with who you need to be. It's going to put you in alignment with what you're supposed to do here. I'm a firm believer, and for those of you guys not into woo, I'll just say I'm a believer that we come to this planet to learn and grow and evolve as people. And I know that we come here, by the way, to learn lessons. And those lessons, by the way, are painful sometimes. You guys heard Jill's today at 12 years old. I had mine at 36 when I lost my kid. We learn these big, powerful lessons that are very uncomfortable and they make us feel shame and guilt and frustration and sadness, anger at times. Uh, but they're the things that oftentimes guide us into that purpose of alignment of who we're supposed to be. And so we'll look back on those experiences 10, 20 years later and go, that wasn't fun. I didn't like that. It was awful. And I don't even know why the hell I did that or why that happened to me, but you'll say, "I'm here today because of this." And so I can
Yeah.
find gratitude for that moment, even as ugly as it was.
Well, and to be in gratitude when you're in it. When you can be in the shit and say, okay, God, whatever you're doing right now, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I know that on the other side of this is a miracle. So, and that's sometimes one of the hardest things to do, especially, losing a child. That is just devastating. How do you be grateful in that moment?
Well, I share that since you asked the question, I'll share. That was the worst, pardon my French, the worst fucking moment of my life. It was. It was the most
Yeah.
painful, worst thing I've ever felt. I felt like I died that day. But I will
Yeah.
say the following. I wouldn't be here on this podcast talking to people across the world, helping people reshape how we see and experience grief. I wouldn't be writing a book right now. I wouldn't be coaching people. I wouldn't be giving back to the world in the capacity in which I'm doing if it wasn't for the way my son came in the world. And so
Yeah.
I can have nothing but gratitude, appreciation, and love and kindness towards him. And he's my guiding fire every day. And I
Yeah.
always say, if God knocked on my door today and said, "I'll give you your son back," what would you give me? My answer would be everything. I'd give it all up to have him back. It's not even a question in my brain.
Yeah.
But I know that his purpose was so much bigger than what my needs or wants were at that moment. And so
Yeah.
I have nothing but to look back on that moment and say, I felt nothing but love and compassion and kindness for a child, an infant, a child that never got to see the world.
Yeah.
But I can say that the gift he gave me and he continues to give me is so powerful and so much bigger than me. And that's where I want to inspire you guys, as you guys have heard from Jill too, that these moments of life we go through, they're painful, they hurt. Sometimes they push us to the very last brink of everything that we are. But even in those moments, even in the worst part of that moment, there's always a gift, there's always a lesson, and there's always a blessing that's going to come out of that. And so, in the throes of grief, it's very hard to see that. But when you get past that harshness of grief, and in Jill's context today of this podcast, letting go of that shame, let go of that. When you let go of that thing, all that other stuff shows up for you, and it doesn't have to be forced. It will come to you. And that's where you will see the beauty of your moment come to pass.
Yeah. You found the gift in your pain, that's when you can get to that place, that it's beautiful.
It is. And I mean, you're doing beautiful work yourself, Jill. You've got a
Thank
website
you.
full of resources. Like I've said, you're raising awareness on a taboo subject in society that affects a lot of people. Something that I just thought about as you were talking. There's 120,000 stillbirths in America every year. That's 120,000 newborns that don't even get to see life. That's big. When I
Yeah.
think about, rape or sexual trauma of any kind, it is so much bigger than a one-off situation. So much bigger.
Yeah.
And so when we're able to understand that and say, this is not uncommon, it's common, it happens. And so instead of hiding from it, running from it, feeling shame over it, all those things, what if we took time to understand people? What if we took time to understand what led to this moment, what caused this moment? You didn't ask to be molested at 3 years old. You didn't. That wasn't your choice. You didn't even get an option. You didn't even
Yeah.
get a say. But it led to that event that happened in your life. And that event led you to where you are today helping people.
I want to I want to go somewhere really quick with you. For people who have been hurt, for people who somebody has acted out with them. And I'm not talking about a 20-year-old adult man or a 50-year-old male or whatever. I'm talking about if you were with little children and there was a child that was acting out. I've coined a phrase. It's age dysmorphia. Remember when you were little and you were like maybe 5 or 6 years old and there was a kid that was 8? You're like, oh my God, he's so old. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember
Yes.
that.
So I I just this is such a delicate conversation because if somebody hurt you, then you're hurt, right? Especially if you were a little kid and you perceive that person to be significantly older than you. Now, whether or not that was still a child, me at 12 years old, I was in between the ages of 7 and 12 when I was acting out. So even as a 12-year-old, like think about who you know that's 12 years old. Like they're a little kid, like you can't even see them as an adult. But if you were a child that was hurt by somebody that was even maybe a couple years older than you, I just pray that that God gives you compassion in your heart for that person because trust me, they're living with a mountain of guilt over what happened. And trust me, they also were a child when it happened. And trust me, they didn't realize what they were doing either. So I know that's a bold thing to ask, especially if somebody's been hurt by somebody who they perceive to be significantly older than them, with this age dysmorphia, but consider that they were a child themselves.
I, that's a bold statement, but I know that at the end of the day, you can even compare that to us adults. Hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people hurt people. Yep.
And when we can understand that, when we get past the anger and the frustration and the pain, when we're able to actually move forward from that, I don't like to say get over it, but I like to say when we're able to move forward from that,
Yeah.
that's when we're able to see exactly what Jill just brought up. We're able to see that and understand that that was a hurt person hurting another person. And that's why it's so important for us to make space and get away from judgment and blame and shame and guilt. It's important for us to move away from those things to create opportunities for what Jill just said, create an opportunity for compassion and understanding, because that's ultimately where not only will we heal, other people will heal. And we can change the world
Yeah.
with that in a very
Yeah.
powerful way. Jill, I'm glad you brought that up today. I wanted to ask you, really quickly, when did you write your book? What led you to that?
I didn't want to write a book. God said, I want a book. I wrote the book. How long has it been now? 3 years ago? What this is when I was doing the transformational, the hardcore leadership. And I had just finished, it was a 4 month course, and I had just finished, and I had just given myself the gift of loving myself. I had just given myself the gift of forgiving myself. And I was, because I had gotten to a place where it was more comfortable for me to talk about it, I was boldly sharing my message with a lot of the people that were in that community. And I started getting a lot of that's my story too. And no, 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 I'm sorry. That came after. The last day that we were on this training, I had a complete and utter meltdown. And I literally screamed, I don't know why the fuck I'm here. Because for a long time, I've been walking around not realizing, I felt like I've been very blessed with my businesses. I love what I do, but I have been walking around like, why am I here? Like I didn't feel like I was really contributing to anything, you know? And that's when I got the message, this is your purpose. You get to talk about this. And I was like, fuck no. There's no way. Oh, I did. I said, there is no way I'm going to talk about this in a public way. And the Holy Spirit and I had a lot of conversations, and that's when I was started sharing my story. And the more Me Too's that I got, the more I thought, this is already a book. Like these people are already the book. And 90% of them that are stories in my book are anonymous. But I love that so many people were brave enough to say that's my story too, because it gives the book more validity than just me telling my story. Other people have my story and they're in the book talking about that's my story too, you know? So that's really how the book happened was my complete and utter meltdown. And they say, right before a breakthrough is a breakdown, right?
Yep, that's how it
Right
works.
before a massive breakthrough is a massive breakdown. And I also like the saying, as deep and low and as low as you go is how high and massive your impact gets to be.
That's powerful.
Isn't that a good one too?
I think that's a true testament. I've always had the idea I've shared with people is when you have these things happen in life, it's like God pulled back on a slingshot, and sometimes He likes to really test the elasticity of it. He'll pull it back really far. But keep in mind when God lets go of that thing, you're going to go rocketing in the other direction, and it will
Mhm.
come faster than you think.
Yeah.
Um, so I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so, Jill, as we wrap up the podcast today, I usually ask my guests a couple questions. The first one is if you're running into somebody who's going through grief or feels stuck in grief, what is one thing you would share with them that could help them navigate that journey just a little bit easier?
You're not alone. You're not alone. We all think we're alone. Ask for help. We all get to ask for help.
That's beautiful. I couldn't agree more with you about that. You are never alone in this world. And I think you said it really well earlier in this podcast. You're not the only one going through this.
You're not special.
Not special.
All right. You're not special.
I know that's a bold statement, but it's very true. You're not the only one. There are other people out there who can resonate with you, have a similar experience of life as you, and those are the people, by the way, that can oftentimes help you figure out how to get that path forward. That's beautifully said. Thanks for
Well, I
bringing
like
that up,
to,
Jill.
I feel like we get to add humor to this stuff, we get to make it light. Because when people can see me talking about my next level trauma and then they see me laughing about it, I'm not doing it because I'm being disrespectful. I'm doing it because I have true joy in my heart because it doesn't hold me down anymore. So I just like to bring a little bit of humor and I probably piss a lot of people off.
Well, I try to tell people on my podcast, yes, we talk about heavy things. We do. It's life. It's what happens, and we don't
Yeah.
oftentimes we don't get to pick and choose it. It happens to us, but we also get to decide what happens for us when we go forward.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I wanted to ask you, Jill, where can people find you if they like this episode and want to reach out to you? Where can we connect with you, and where can we find your book?
Yeah, jilleschultz.com is my website. Everything is there. My social. I even have it at one point I was doing Jill's favorite song of the week. I'm really into music. So I have Jill's joke of the week on there. Like there's a lot of other stuff on my website, but the book's there, the resources are there, the get help stuff is there. And all my social media handles are there as well.
Amazing. Well, I want to let listeners know I will have all those links in the show notes. When you guys get done with the episode, feel free to look in there. You'll find Jill's link to her website so you guys can reach out and get connected with her. Jill, thank you again for being a guest on today's episode of the
It's
Empower
my,
Grief Journey.
it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining Jill and I on today's episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Jill's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. You're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.